Hi, I'm Louis O'Shea, and this is the behind the scenes of Philip. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the dream sequence, or Tony's dream sequence to be precise. Basically, this scene comes in about a quarter of the way through the actual film. It's used to kind of spook and scare the audience. It comes in just after quite a calm, relaxed scene, so I feel it will have a really good impact on the audience. To those of you who haven't yet watched the film and only know this part of the film, this is a version of Tony's future that he's dreaming up. And Philip is kind of, well, an interesting character to say the least. I wanted this scene to really take the audience out of their comfort zone. Until this point, well, the film had been quite light-hearted and simple. Well, simple for a sci-fi film, that is. This is the first point where fear is installed in the audience, and I feel it has a really big impact on them. We see it through Tony. Tony is met by a bunch of his deceased friends, and of course, yours truly, his psychological demon, Philip. I wanted the audience to be, well, I wanted them to feel empathy for the Tony character. Until this point, he has been shown as kind of, to say the least, not the most interesting or nicest of characters. He's been shown bullied by his friends, and he's not the comedian of the group and everything, and I thought this was my way of kind of getting people to care about the Tony character. I felt the mise-en-scene was very important for this scene. I used my dad's house rather than my own, because let's face it, the rest of the house is this colour and doesn't really scream terrifying. Rather than my dad's house is a bit more old-fashioned. It's got creaky staircases, dark crevices, small tight rooms where anything could jump out at you. It really scared me when I was younger. I didn't like to stay there at all. I kind of thought, as it had such an effect on me, maybe it would have an effect on the audience. That's really why I used it. But I wasn't trying to scare 5-year-olds and toddlers. I was trying to scare teenagers and older. I worked quite hard on costume and props as well, and also makeup. Makeup was very important to me. Creating this eerie surrounding was one thing, but I needed the characters to look realistic. I added a lot of blood to them to make them seem, well, bludgeoned to death realistically. I worked on doing a lot of wounds, cuts, scars. I was quite hands-on at that point. I ruined many t-shirts, my own and my friends. Cutting holes in them, covering them in blood, making them look like they had been, quite frankly, slashed up. To be honest, lighting was really fixed up during the editing. At the time, it was quite bright because I didn't want to eliminate the light altogether, and I wanted the characters to seem much more real, the light on their faces, and to show glistening off the cuts and everything. So yeah, I used quite strong lighting, but I used mostly lamps and sort of offside lights, which I thought created a lot of shadow and made the images much more distorted, much more eerie, gave it a much more horror effect, which is what the genre I was going for this scene. I also thought that it would make quite an impact on the first character you see deceased, who's Boris. Now, in the scene before this scene, Boris is shown as a playful character, playing tricks and pranks on everyone, in the sixth form area. And quite frankly, then going from that to the deceased Boris, where he is pretty beaten up and is covered in cuts and has someone that the audience has never met, cutting them up, well, I thought that would make quite a severe shock to the audience. Philip's prop was quite important. Philip had a small blade which would be, quite frankly, unthreatening and kind of a joke in most horror films. But in this, it seems quite threatening in a way, because this small blade defeated all of Tony's friends. I feel that the audience would feel that Philip is mildly invincible in a way. He simply cuts down all in his path with no effort whatsoever. And with this tiny blade, tiny little blade, I feel out of the two of them, Tony and Philip would seem pretty powerful. Other props were also used to shock the audience. Connor is revealed to the audience under a cloth which covers his face and parts of his body. Tony removes it and is blown away by what he finds. Connor dead under these clothes. And I've watched it with many people, and every single time, the first time they watch it, they are also always shocked by what they see. They're like, oh, where did that come from? And I feel that's exactly what I was looking for. We also then see a panicked Tony after this scene, running away, all panicked, gets into the corner. I think anyone would do a similar sort of thing in that situation, being met with all that sort of, the dead bodies of your friends, you know? You would panic, you would run away. I feel, again, the audience would empathise with the Tony character, but also maybe they'd be kind of afraid. Another very important aspect to the film was the cinematography. Many close-ups were used mostly to show the facial expressions of Tony and also to show the facial expressions of Philip. However, I also used them quite a lot to show the blank expressions on the deceased bodies. We've got Boris, Caesar, Connor, and of course Peter, who is, well, quite unnerving, waking up and seeing your friend dead in your bed next to you. I feel it's got a very Godfather feel to it, except without the horse. At the beginning of this scene as well, we see a close-up of Tony's hands. I feel this will install confusion with the audience. We go from the scene of everyone lying around doing nothing, and I feel it's just a close-up of slowly with Tony. He's kind of drifting off, he's lying like that, and then bang, we just see his hands. And it's like, well, what's happened? We were just in this quite chilled out, relaxed space. It was our comfort zone. And that's when the horror kicks in. That's when we see the facial expression of Tony looking around, and then people notice the dream sequence. That's all I was really going for, to be honest. A tilt is used on the door where Boris is lying dead behind, and it levels out as Tony comes in, but we see a flicker of Boris being killed by Philip. Of course, at this time, no one knows who Philip is. They can assume, if they've seen like the publicity posters and everything, but again, they can't quite tell. You see the back of his head, and he's stabbing Boris. Boris is moving and everything, and I feel that people want to know what's behind the door, and this slow moving towards it's quite eerie. It goes again with the genre, with the conventions of horror, the genre conventions of horror. So yeah, I feel that this was installed correctly, and I'm pleased with it, to be honest. As Tony wakes from his dream, we are first met by this image, this very quick zoom and close-up of Boris's face. As it moves in, Tony wakes up, sits forward. It makes you feel like you're out of the dream. You're back to reality. But then you've got to remember, he wasn't in his room. He was at sixth form. He was having a little nap at sixth form. People know, again, that he's still in the dream. He is still in the dream. Again, I used a close-up on the unveiling of Connor. We see Connor being moved, we see the reaction from Tony moving away, and we see a close-up of Connor's face. He's got a blank expression, he's obviously deceased. He looks a little bit offbeat. Genre-wise, this film is a hybrid. It comes under sort of sci-fi action, but it's got a comical feel to it, and it's got the horror feel that you see in that scene. That scene is the horror aspect. When Philip is shown cutting Tony's hand, of course I'm going to think, as he does it, I'll do a quick close-up of the hand. It'll be very obvious, easy to follow. I didn't really want to do that, if I'm honest. I kind of preferred the idea of people questioning why and what was he doing? Why was he doing it? What was he doing? It's not very obvious what Philip's motives, but they're revealed later on in the film. The thing that you're not shown in this sequence is that when Tony wakes up, he has a cut on his hand, and he doesn't know, no one understands how he's got it, and it's kind of meant to spook you. That was when the eerie soundtrack comes in. It's a nice zoom on the hand, zoom on Tony's face, and then he goes back to normal. I feel people who follow what was happening, it will be very easy for them to pick up on it. People who look away and aren't too interested, or they're going to be a bit confused. But it'll be that sort of thing where they're like, oh, is that what he was doing? And they'll be like, yeah, didn't you know that? It's like, no, wasn't paying attention. Editing was obviously a massive part of this scene. I did a lot of overlapping of the footage, so I'd play the same footage twice on the editing board, so you'd have the image here, and one would be slightly behind, so when they played, one was overlapping it, and it was like sort of ghostly, I feel. This actually was an accident, which I'm very glad I did, and after I did that accident once, I repeated it. It's mostly with Philip. Whenever we really see Philip, he's kind of got this sort of other face moving across, and the only other time I do it is to link the other characters with Philip. Philip was shown killing Boris, and then we see it happening with Boris as well. We see his face still there and then moving side to side like that. We also see it with Caesar, who is lying dead on the floor. He's got this ghosty feel again. But what I quite like is we've got the same thing happening with Tony, but it only happens once, and it's very subtle the way it happens. I see Tony's hands, and they do the ghosty thing. This is because I was trying to link Tony and Philip together. I don't think people would have really noticed. I think it's one of those things that you have to point out.